Hello and welcome to the EU Perspectives podcast. I'm Jennifer Baker, coming to you today from the European Parliament, where we're going to be discussing social media issues with MEP Sieper from the Renew Group. We're going to focus a little bit on age verification. We'll talk about what the concerns are there. We'll talk about disinformation and what the EU can do about it in terms of regulation. So, Lucas, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, your group has said that they think the European Commission President von der Leyen should declare social media a public health emergency. That's really strong language, and we know she is expected to announce something in her State of the Union address in September. What do you think her response should look like? What should be the outcome?
I think her response should really tackle the different issues that we face with social media, but in one holistic regulation. So we have the health issue with children, especially being addicted to social media, which is in course to the algorithms. We have the whole question of the creator industry, which is completely unregulated until now, even though it's a €1 billion business. We have illegal activities on social media, from drugs to weapons to sex trafficking. And we have the real danger to everyday society, where just 1 week ago in Germany, a young student started an attack on his own school because he was pushed to it by online forums. So I would say this is now the time the time would have been 20 years ago, but this is now finally, hopefully, the time to go and do one big social media legislation.
Well, I think it was your group as well. They put out some of the costs of failing to act on youth mental ill health is estimated to cost around 1.7 trillion between 2024 and 2033. I mean, that is a huge amount of money. So there are economic points at stake. Some member states, possibly for this reason, have decided to go it alone. You think a holistic response is important. Is there a business case for this? Is there, a point of view of where we've got many of the big social media companies coming from the US and they see an unlevel playing field? Is this simply what that's about, or is it going further?
I think it's rooted in the very function of social media itself. Social media does not care about borders. So the child from Warsaw can consume the same stuff like the child from Rome. And so that's why having national regulation makes no sense, because the issue at hand is in no way national. It's also, even if we look at the content that might be produced for the certain member states in the respective language, the systematic issues are the same. Not only in Europe even, but globally. But unfortunately, global governance is non-existent at the moment, so we can at least do it in Europe with one standard.
And hopefully the Brussels effect will export that. Well, we hope. Yeah. Do age restrictions work? I mean, do these bans work? We've seen Australia went ahead, was kind of a leader in this move. Smart kids can get around a lot of things. I mean, is there a real feeling that a ban is the right way to go? Or is it things like the Commission's age verification app? What sort of lessons do you see from other jurisdictions?
I think they work enough, like with any child protection legislation. Of course, as you say, children can go their way around, but only because the law can be broken. That should never be the reason not to enact it. I don't know. In Germany, we are allowed to drink liquor with the age of 18. And I can tell you that I drank my fair share of liquor before turning 18. But I'm also very certain that if it would have been freely available, our parties, our house parties that we had back in the time, where it would have been way worse. So I would say it's a good thing. It needs to be technically good enough. It cannot work in a way where you, have to scan your ID every time you're entering the internet, because then there's no privacy left whatsoever. But I would say if we do an approach where especially the settings of devices can be adjusted by the parents, then it will work enough.
Well, you've touched there on one of the questions and one of the thornier issues, which is around privacy, because we talk about wanting to provide protection for children, but at the same time, adults need to be allowed their access to adult material that is perfectly legitimate and legal. And some of the things you were mentioning earlier as problems, we're conflating a little bit legal behaviour and illegal behaviour. And some of the things you're talking about, access to weapons or drugs and so on, is prohibited. And maybe that's really in the dark net rather than on the big social media, easily accessible platforms. What is your biggest concern? I mean, there are things that happen that are difficult to define, like cyberbullying, like shortening attention spans. And then there are things that are clearly absolutely illegal. Where is there a balance to be found, or where is your biggest concern?
My biggest concern is really motivating children to violence. That's for me the most terrible thing. As I said, we had this a week ago, this attack on the school by a little, like not little boy, but by a boy who was just hanging out in internet forums until the people there convinced him that he should go and murder his fellow students. We had a few years ago this terrible case in Germany where two girls of 13 and 14 years old killed another 14-year-old because they were of the opinion that the Slender Man, which is a famous figure from a famous video game, told them to, because this is in a way unstoppable, and this also has the most dire consequences. If I don't know, your child gets addicted to drugs that were available online. And by the way, it's not only the darknet. You can find Instagram pages en masse in Brussels who offer drugs. This can be healed. They can go into rehab. Or if a child sees terrible material online, that can also be solved through therapy. But if a child is made to take another child's life, that is, first of all, the other child's dead, and then this trauma will also never go away. So that's, for me, that's the biggest concern, and that's also where I think all the issues with privacy and stuff does not really come into question. If you have an account in an online forum that is meant to steer violence, you have no right to privacy, basically.
And also, we do put in different safeguards for those who are under 18, as you said. For example, drinking, your wild youth notwithstanding, that is a thing we do. But there are concerns around social media for adults as well, and I want to address those because there's questions of disinformation, of targeted advertising that is not maybe clearly labelled. And I always say it's one thing if you're missold a lipstick, it's a very different thing if you're missold a president or you're missold a referendum or an election. What are your concerns where that is taking place? Because, of course, we can't necessarily, as I say, start banning things all over the place for adults when it's not technically illegal content.
I mean, misinformation, I would say, on social media is the biggest danger to democracy that we face right now. And I think that what we can do there is really like oblige platforms to fact check, basically. But this will not solve everything, and it's not enough, and it's also not, you cannot do it 100% because yes, we might agree on the fact that the Earth is round, but there can be a lot of scientific discussions to what actually led to that. I would say there will be astrophysicians physicians, right? Yeah. Who will, yeah.
Astrophysicists.
Physicists, exactly. Not my mother language, English. They will give you a whole lot of different reasons. Like it is in science, you have different perspectives, different reasons. I would say what we need to do there, and this, by the way, also solves a lot of other issues that we touched today. We need social media literacy is the solution for adults as well as for children. Because, in my opinion, adults and children are a little bit on par when it comes to their ability to use social media, because all of us didn't have it in school, which is a big mistake till this day. But I would say I grew up in it, while for you it came into your life 30 years after you were born. So I would say we are on par in our ability, and we need to change that. And if we have especially literate children, they will be able to understand fake information. They will also understand what content is dangerous for them, which content they are not old enough to access, and this will solve a lot.
Well, let's just say, I mean, media literacy is always touted as the panacea for everything, but in other areas of life where things may be a little bit tricky or there may be hazards, we don't expect the individual to go and check that their car has seatbelts that work. We expect those seatbelts should be put in as standard by the car manufacturer. I mean, is this a little bit shifting the responsibility back to the user instead of putting the responsibility on the platforms that host the material?
I mean, I would now claim that that's a little bit a cultural thing, because in Germany we in fact do expect the people to be have that level of safe responsibility. But I agree where you're coming from, and especially in consumer protection areas, this is what we are doing. So I would say you need to also, of course, you need to force the companies, that what I said before, you need to oblige them to do fact checking, you need to oblige them to go against certain behavior on their platforms. But the truth is also we will lose this fight in a certain way, because those companies do not operate out of Europe. Yes, they have their subsidiaries here and stuff, but they will be US tech companies or Chinese tech companies for that matter, after all. And so the main regulation regulating them will always be the Chinese or US legislation, and they will never lay open their algorithm to us. If we would like to do real consumer protection regulation, then we would need to have full access to the algorithm, in the same way as the relevant authority has full access to the specifics of a car. Yeah. This is something maybe average people doesn't know that, but if you want to bring a car to the European market, you actually have to go to the authorities, and in a very clandestine, very well protected process, the state will look at that car and will check if it's safe. But this we cannot do, because they will never give this algorithm to us. We cannot force them, except for the threat of banning the platform, like we would ban a car, where the manufacturer would not be willing to lay everything open. But we will not do that. So I would say educating our own people is the way better shot.
Well, you mentioned labeling and fact-checking, and labeling works to a degree, but we can't have products which just say may contain internet on it. And disinformation can have these real-world consequences. If someone is given misleading health advice, they're told to drink bleach to cure COVID or something equally ridiculous. Who needs to be responsible when things go badly wrong? Because making companies responsible is a way to ensure that it goes beyond labeling in a proactive way rather than a passive way. Because, and there's labeling and then there's labeling. Mm-hmm. We've seen that the Commission issued preliminary findings against TikTok and against Meta for this addictive design, which is all about steering your usage in a particular way through very nuanced methods. Labeling can be the same. You can label something so it's very clear, or you can label something so it's a little bit ambiguous and the average user just won't see it. How do we regulate that and hold people, and who should be held accountable? I would say we just take over the legislation that we have for products. Mm-hmm. When, I don't know, I get electrocuted by this product, I can go as a consumer in Europe and I can go and sue the guy who sold it to me. Mm-hmm. But if I cannot get my money from the guy that sold the phone to me, I can go to the guy who manufactured the phone and get the money from this guy. Mm-hmm. And if I cannot get the money from the guy that manufactured the phone, I can go to the guy that made the parts that the manufacturer used. So this is what we already have in Europe. We already have the system where the whole supply chain can be liable to the end consumer. Mm-hmm. And that's for me the same thing that we should do on social media. Like, if the person who spreads misinformation that leads to damage cannot be made liable, then it should be the platform. Yeah. And then you will see how motivated the platforms will be and how fast they will be in stopping anyone from spreading misinformation on their platforms. Because for them, then it would be there would be no other way to control it. The platforms don't want
millions of people running around on their platforms creating liability cases for themselves.
Well, I mentioned the Meta and the TikTok preliminary findings. Those are under the DSA, the Digital Services Act. Why do we also need a social media act or a social media rule book, as it were, separate from that? I mean, because many of the social media companies we're talking about fall under DSA. Is this because it's so-called social media plus?
I mean, I would say because the DSA tackles very certain set of problems. It's already in the name of the act, basically. But social media is interconnected and with all the other fields, because as I was talking about content creators, sometimes it's a content creator that spreads misinformation, maybe unwillingly, but because this person is making business out of it, we would maybe still make them liable in the same way as we make other people liable that unwillingly damage something in the wake of their business. We regulated every aspect of the world in certain boxes. But we never put the big thing that now is half our life, the internet, in one box. And I think that needs to change because this makes the better quality of legislation than to have all these fragmented acts that sometimes contradict each other, sometimes not. Yeah.
I mean, but this is what the companies complain about, and they have a right to their business models as well, whatever you might think about them. So they say this fragmented, overlapping legislation is a problem, which is why we're having all these omnibuses at the moment. So you think a new regulation should encompass that, should probably not contradict the DSA or the DMA and somehow work alongside it. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's going to happen because of what I already know from the what people say inside this institution. So we will definitely have a big social media legislation, and it will most likely start by the end of the year.
Okay, well, we'll have to see how that comes out, what it looks like, and whether it's enforceable, because enforcement, then again, is another step along the path. To wrap up, there's been a lot of talk about digital sovereignty, tech sovereignty, that we need our own EU homegrown social media companies.
Yeah.
There's also a long-standing debate about whether we need a cultural commons, an open space for dialogue, for debate, whether that be creative or political. What do you think are the possibilities of that? And can private companies ever provide that? Do you think there is a role out there for some sort of EU-funded social space?
I mean, on EU social media companies, I think not in the way that what current social media companies offer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will not have an EU Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, Pinterest. I don't know if it's EU.
We've got Spotify.
Yes, but also only in Europe. And in the rest of the world, people use Apple Music. So this is like those are market giants. And we will not create now a new social media company that offers the same service that just pushes those market giants. But social media will evolve. And in the same way as something like TikTok was unimaginable 15 years ago, there will be new social media platforms, and there will be things that we don't do at the moment. And I think if Europe positions itself there, and we get get money from the EU for that, and good legislation, then we can have our own EU social media companies, and we will not leave the whole market to the Americans and the Chinese. On the commons thing, I think it is incredibly important, and I think it can happen. And I'm quite aware that you asked me this question because you researched my party, and you know that this is exactly what my party is doing. And we have such a platform within the Party of Progress, which works exactly like a digital town hall, basically, where everyone, no matter if you live in Germany, you can have, if you have registered residents or EU citizenship, and outside of Germany, all EU citizens basically can access that and work on that. So I believe democracy will only survive if we give democracy an update, because the way that democracy works has not been updated for the past 80 years. basically, and the digital realm is the way to go. So if the EU is any smart, they start to invest in that yesterday.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We've tried to cover an awful lot in quite a
Thank
short
you.
space of time. And thank you very much for joining us here on the EU Perspectives podcast. That's it for today, but do keep an eye on the website where we cover this and many other hot political topics every day.